Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to a random review. Today's random review is Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo. This has been a long time coming. I remember during one of Daisuke Beppu's live chats, or even one of his videos, I'd left a comment about how I'm not a big fan of Vertigo. I think it's one of Daisuke's favourite films, don't want to misquote him, but I said I'd give it another go and eventually do a video on it, so I'm doing a video on it. As people may know if they've watched my channel, I'm not the biggest Hitchcock fan. I think he is a bit overrated, but again, this is just my opinion, this is not fact. I know there's plenty of people who think he's the greatest filmmaker of all time, and that's absolutely fine. I disagree, but it's just an opinion. My opinion is not fact. I mentioned on the second site backlog cleared video, on the extras of Nick Rogue's Walkabout, Danny Boyle says Nick Rogue is the greatest British filmmaker of all time. Again, that is Danny Boyle's opinion, not fact. I have a different opinion, but that's fair enough. This is all subjective. Before I get abusive comments, I'm not here to slag off Hitchcock. Hitchcock, if you're talking about the most influential directors, if you're talking about the most important directors of the 20th century, Hitchcock's probably in the top 5. But just for me, I just don't really connect with Hitchcock that much. Again, despite what people might think, every Hitchcock film that I have ever watched is a good film. That's not debatable. He makes good films. I'm not here to go, all of Hitchcock's films are rubbish, because that would not be true. I Have the Wrong Man, I have Jamaica Inn, I have Dial M for Murder. Psycho is a good film. I don't think it compares to the films made round about it, like Les Yeux Sans Visage or La Diabolique or Peeping Tom. But again, that is just my opinion, that is not fact. So I'm not here to say, I don't want you to think that I think Hitchcock's trash. He's not. I just think, for me, I don't think his films have aged very well. I get the influence, I get his importance and all of that. So that's just a prelude. You can call me a Hitchcock hater. I'm not a Hitchcock hater. I just don't respond to his work as much as I respond to other directors' work, even though I understand his importance the same way some directors I love other people can't stand or other people don't get either. That's absolutely fine. This is all subjective. I know sometimes when you say, a sacred cow like Hitchcock isn't the greatest filmmaker of all time, people get upset, and that's fine. But it's interesting because Vertigo in 1958, there's lots of Hitchcock fans themselves that would say perhaps it's not his best film, but it is. I don't know whether it's still the number one film in Sight and Sound's top 200 or whatever. I know it replaced Citizen Kane, who was the number one for years. Now, I love Orson Welles. I love Orson Welles more than I love Alfred Hitchcock, but I still wouldn't say Citizen Kane's the greatest film ever made either. I don't think it's Orson Welles' best film. But obviously these lists, it's sometimes just convenient to put a certain film kind of everybody can agree. The Godfather's always very high. I'm not a fan of the Godfather films either. I know I'm weird. But enough of the babble. Let's actually just talk about Vertigo. Again, for me, Vertigo is a good film. I just don't see it as a masterpiece, and that's fine. Again, there's plenty of films I consider masterpieces that people just don't, and that's fair enough. It stars Jimmy Stewart, who's fantastic, and Kim Novak, who's fantastic. Titles by Saul Bass, music by Bernard Herrmann. And it's about a cop who's forced to retire because of his vertigo after an accident where a beat cop tries to save him off a roof and ends up dying. It's funny, the film's not really about vertigo that much at all, which is probably a bit of Hitchcock's sense of humour. The opening scene where Jim Stewart pretty much mentions vertigo and talks about vertigo like about 10 times in the opening scene. He gets hired by an old friend to follow his wife because his wife's behaving strangely. Jimmy Stewart starts getting obsessed with her, like quite a lot of characters in Hitchcock films do, get obsessed with one thing or another. He tries to he does save her from, she jumps in the San Francisco Bay. He gets feelings, the inevitable twist happens, that sends Jimmy Stewart spiralling out of control until he latches on to another woman that looks like the wife that he was obsessed with, and then we find out the truth. Again, I think one of the things with Hitchcock films is because of the passage of time, because his films are very influential, because lots of people have taken things from his films, I think from a distance one might become a little jaded towards the films, speaking not as an uber fan. In the same way, for me, The Exorcist hasn't aged well just because it's been parodied and it's been ripped off so many times, and that might be another reason with my disconnect with Hitchcock, just because those Hitchcockian things have been done so many times, you kind of forget the impact and the importance of when these films came out at first, and I'm perfectly willing to hold my hands up and admit that. Again, I'm not a film scholar, my analysis of films don't go that deep, it's more just what is your visceral emotional reaction to a film. You know, you can analyse a film and you can go into all the layers and depths and all that, but it's really what is the impression of the film when it hits you the first time or the second time or the third time. How do your emotions, how do you come to the film, how do they change? And for me, again, Vertigo is a good film. I've rated it a 3 on Letterboxd. To be fair, I might change that to a 4. The other Hitchcock films that I own, I would give them 4-star films as well. So again, this is not Hitchcock bashing, this is just me trying to explain why I just don't think Vertigo, well, 1 is the greatest film of all time, but that's not Vertigo's fault that it's been voted by Sight and Sound or whoever votes for it. And Hitchcock was a very good technician. I did have him in my technicians list when I did the director list, I believe. He might have been in the overrated if I did an overrated. Yeah, I know I'm babbling, but it's just to say Hitchcock makes good films. Vertigo is a good film. There's parts of it I really liked. It should have been shorter, and the ending is rather abrupt. I don't know whether they realised at the ending that the film was too long, and instead of cutting some of the padding in the first half, they just decided to make it really abrupt at the end. Again, that might have just been Hitchcock being Hitchcock and just subverting the audience's expectations. I don't know. I'm not a Hitchcock scholar. Perhaps somebody who is could let me know in the comments. But for me, it's overlong. The dream sequence, which again was a big thing at the time, to me just doesn't really fit with it. The scene when they go out to the park and the trees and they see the ring, she points to times in the trees and then she kind of wanders off. That scene is wonderful. It's absolutely fantastic. And there's a lot to like about Vertigo. Again, this is not me saying, despite what people think, I'm not saying Hitchcock's absolute trash, because that would be ridiculous. He's not. He makes good films. Just for me, none of the films that I've seen by Hitchcock, and I haven't seen every Hitchcock film, none of them are masterpieces, none of them are 5-star films. But again, that is not fact. That is just my opinion. My opinion is not fact. Nobody's opinion is fact. Yeah, a long time coming. I rewatched it and I just thought I should do a video to be open and honest and transparent, and say, in my opinion, Vertigo is a good film. It's a very good film. It has wonderful moments, great scenes, but for me, it's not a 5-star film. But for plenty of other people it is, and that's absolutely great. So leave comments below what your feelings are for Vertigo. Try not to give me too much abuse for not saying it's a masterpiece. These polls have to be filled in, and again, like I said, I love Orson Welles, but Citizen Kane isn't the greatest film ever made. I don't think I can actually say what the greatest film is ever made, because it's just completely subjective. And it is an achievement that Vertigo is number one, even though I think some Hitchcock fans would actually say it's not his best film. But again, as far as importance, as far as influence, yes, Vertigo is right up there. But this is just my personal opinion, not fact, obviously, as people will let me know. So thanks very much for watching this controversial random review. Upshot is, Vertigo is a good film. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, with that bombshell saying farewell.